And we are live. Welcome to Hot Take Express with Kent Chamberlain. I'm your host, Kent Chamberlain, and this is episode 5. Landback is fundamentally incompatible with communism and anti-imperialism. Last episode, I talked about... Actually, that's not true. In episode 3, I talked about the need for a separate PATSOC org. Why is this necessary? Well, basically because we can't make common cause with the PATSOC people. It just doesn't work. It's not going to work. It's not ever going to work. We need our own org. This is not going to make sense, or the explanation I gave is not going to make sense without a fuller investigation of the land back movement, however. So who makes up the land movement and who doesn't? First off, let's talk about who supports land back. First and foremost, we have to say white middle-class academia, out of white guilt and desire to be the white savior good guy avatars of Ferngullion, together with their noble savage allies, lorded over the dumb poor problematics they try to depict as Nazguls. It's basically just a way for them to sneak their class privilege in through academia, to sort of gatekeep the poors out of being able to take their wealth away, because they've been able to master the aesthetics of being socialister than now. But notice the socialist cause they are supporting is the one that doesn't really involve transferring wealth, just other people's land. And in the most racist and bigoted of terms too. So who else? It's not true that no minorities support land back. That would not be a true statement. Minority middle class academia also supports land back. Each one imagines they'll be the Chairman Mao of the coming dispensation, basically. And for real, I know some of these kids, and they're the ones on the reservation with, pools in their backyard where everyone else lives in trailers, and the New York Times sends reporters there every 6 months to talk about, man, that place really poor, huh? Yeah, your average... Well, we'll get there. But yeah, some of these people will. Alright. And I dated one of these girls, actually, for, about a month. And she was chill and stuff, but, her dad was, literally he was a judge, a federal judge. She was Zuni, by the way. But, actually, I don't need to say anymore on that. But, because I think that might actually be personally identifying. But, just suffice it to say that a lot of these families are very wealthy, and it's through shady, ill-gotten wealth. And just leave it at that, because and it's the kids aren't going to be shiny apples off of a rotten tree, that's naive. That is so naive. People can change, it's true, but I doubt these ones. I really doubt it, because they've got no reason to. I mean, they've mastered play acting socialism so that they don't actually have to change anything that they do or give up anything that they have. So there is one other element that supports land back. That'd be minority and white lumpins who are always down for a paycheck. I mean, they talk about or Marx in the one he wrote about the Bonapartist revolution, coup thing in France. I forget what it's called, like on the 18th Brumaire, I think. But he talks about how when factions of the bourgeoisie try to resolve their contradictions between each other at each other's expense, they will sometimes draft in lumpen proletariats. That'd be like thieves, beggars, welfare scroungers, that kind of thing. And they would send, to just basically be foot soldiers during the coup or revolution or whatever. And because it happened, when Napoleon III came to power, and it is a common feature. The Nazis had, the SS and the brown shirts and the it's a common feature of fascist things, but it's also a common feature of not just fascist movements, but other Bonapartist movements, like the PSUV, I think it's called, the ruling party of Venezuela. It was not initially meant to be socialist. Chavez was trying to do a third way Bonapartist kind of thing, but quickly realized that socialism was the best way to go about his business. And I think that was kind of the case with Castro too in Cuba. It's just, reality has a well-known socialist bias. Let's see. But anyway, so those are the people who support land back. Now, who opposes land back? First off, actual working class black people, who in New York were the ones who voted for Eric Adams because they didn't want riots and looting in their neighborhoods. And let's be real, Eric Adams was a terrible candidate and deserved to lose. But all the other candidates were worse from that perspective. No, it's not like black people love the cops. Of course not. Stop and frisk is a total offense to black dignity. And it, never was anything else. But and the cops just have, there's just a very racist justice system in this country. Yeah, that goes without saying almost at this point. But all the same, you do need some kind of law and order, some kind of security of property to get ahead in this society. If you're a very small business owner, like a lot of the people in the city try to be, because it's an obvious way out of poverty if you're good at it, then you want to make sure that your shop isn't busted up. You want to make sure that the goods you invested all your money on don't get smashed up in riots or something. It's not that you hate the cause the rioters support, it's just that you don't want your life savings, your shot at trying to make it in this world, go up in flames because someone needs to make a political statement. I mean, it's not that hard to understand, and it's not just the small business owners either. It's, they employ workers that might not have jobs if the small business owners go under, and because they're very precarious. Like, one shake and they're of the system and they're back down into the ranks of the proletariat themselves. So, or maybe even lumpins if things go badly enough. Uh, so, like, and just to share a bit of my experience, when I was in college, I went to a little tiny town in Nebraska called Chadron. Um, and I opened up a place called Last Level Gaming because I realized that they didn't have a used video game store. They didn't have a new video game store either. It's a very small town, but I figured, well, I worked at Gamers, which was still is a video game chain in Omaha, uh, and so like I saved up some of my money for my paychecks there, and I bought like $1,000 worth of used video games in bulk, and got like a decent amount of video games, and just resold them at a healthy profit that was still like very, very reasonable. Like I got like a lot of business from the Lakota Res actually. The families would come into town once every month to do their shopping, and while they're there, they'd be like, "Oh, there's a new store. Let's go check it out." And they would, and they'd see some fairly reasonably priced video games, and there'd be kids that save up their money and stuff, and like I was making a healthy profit, but I wasn't like screwing them. Like like it was still very reasonable for them. Like I don't think I was like a filthy capitalist. For the little tiny period in my life where I was, and it was like not really because it was one of like 3 jobs I had that semester. I was a very, very busy undergrad. I still don't know how I did it, but and the other 2 I was, just like a standard proletarian. Um, but no, I made my money back, and was able to put some of that towards like the tuition and stuff, and in books and whatnot. But like, it wasn't like I wasn't getting rich hand over fist, and like, if there had been like some big, IRS tax crackdown or something, like I could have lost a lot of money even if like I didn't ended up not owing anything, just because like defending yourself from that stuff can be expensive. There's like a lot of stuff behind the scenes that people don't realize goes on. Um, I'm not saying you got to be like a total establishment Republican about like um, business interests, but like there is a certain level of making sure businesses can operate that does have to be done to maintain society. Like you can't be like totally ignorant of that aspect of um, the political economy. But yeah, like so that affects working class and very petty bourgeois, like very small business owners, black people. So they don't want land back because like they like that's advanced by factions of the Democrats basically. Like land back is more extreme BLM, and BLM has already torn up their neighborhoods. So they're not about it. Then you got like actual working class Latinos who voted for Trump more the second time around. Like those are not the actions of people who want you to say it Latinx and respect their pronouns and you know No. These are not people that are going to be susceptible to a land back proposal. You know, the even the so-called Chicanos aren't really susceptible to it. Like if you're gonna like just splice and dice the Latino population just to be the descendants of the people who were here before Guadalupe Hidalgo. If you even just them, they're the ones voting for Trump the hardest. Like those border districts that are mostly Chicano in Texas. They're some of the harder red swings. Like again, middle class Chicanx studies, whatever, with like 3 hair colors, they them might support land back, but your actual like working class Latino could not give a single blessed rat screw. Like, and then who else? Actual working class natives who serve in the military, the American imperialist military, yes, that one, at higher rates than any other demographic. Why? Because of those warrior cultures of, that, like you look back to the so-called Wild West period, like, they had all these warrior cultures. When they weren't fighting us, they were fighting each other. And I say they because I'm an American, but I could also be saying we because I'm Shawnee, Potawatomi, and Haudenosaunee. But like, but yeah, like in a lot of our societies, war was part of the transition to manhood. War is what made you a man. And as this wasn't usually as deadly as it was, as it became before the horse. But after the horse came back to North America, because fun fact, it's actually native to North America, but died out here, survived in Eurasia, and then of course came back here where it originated. But so when the horse came back to North America, it made our nations a lot more mobile and warfare a lot more deadly. So there were some cultural innovations that were starting to happen. Like the Lakota have a thing called counting coup, where they come and strike you with a stick. Like they ride up to you and do that, and it's like they could have killed you, but they didn't. So it's like there were some cultural adaptations to the introduction of the horse. Like, okay, we probably shouldn't keep actually killing each other, but we do still need to signify the bravery thing. So, like maybe over time, counting coup would have spread as a concept, if it weren't for like the Americans marching in. But that just because the Americans came in doesn't mean that military definition of manhood went away. When the tribes or the nations couldn't fight each other, or the U.S. military, they're almost like, well, how do we become men? The new generations of men coming up, or boys coming up. Yeah, like they were like, how do we become men if we cannot fight? So a lot of us saw the outlet for that in joining the U.S. military. Not even necessarily caring whether the cause was right or wrong, because again, look at our native history, and you will see men of flesh and blood like anywhere else. We were not always the good guys, and never had any conceits to the contrary. Like, Native Americans can be imperialists too. Look at the Beaver Wars, where one of my people, the Haudenosaunee, fought and colonized and settled the lands of my other people, the Shawnee. because there were beaver pelts there, and the Dutch and the French and the British were paying very, very good prices for beaver pelts. And, they wanted that trade, and they wanted the Shawnee to not have that trade, and they had the guns, and the Shawnee didn't have the guns. So colonialism and imperialism happened. Natives aren't better people. We really aren't. We're just the same. So, that's like, so there's not really any reservations about serving in even an imperialist military, the very military that conquered you, even, because there's still this warrior cultural imperative. And it's not every nation, but it's a significant amount. It's like, okay, so here's a story. When I was a librarian on the Lakota res, I had a young man come up to me. I was in like the 8th grade, and he was like, "Well, hey, so my dad wants me to be, he wants me to go in the Air Force and be a pilot like he was, and like my grandpa was, but I'm not sure I want to do that. What do you think?" And it's like, first off, I couldn't be like full on commie with this kid, because that's just not, again, the cultural imperative is the warrior imperative, so kind of got to respect that. But so I was like, well, serving in the military is an honorable profession. Like my dad served in the Air Force, for 20 years, and there's it is an honorable profession, and because in a native context it is, you are defending your people. That is honorable. American imperialism doesn't really weigh into it like in these considerations. So and again, I as a teacher, there are a lot of things you just are straight up not allowed to say. Whether they make it explicit or not is not always the matter. You just understand that certain topics are off topic, are off limits. So, I never straight up, propagandize the kids or anything. But like, so I was like, yeah, it's an honorable occupation. And honestly, some certain aspects of it really are. Like, some jobs of it need to be done. Like, the people that keep the nuclear missiles safe, for example. But like, you legit don't want terrorists, getting a hold of those things, right? You can hate American imperialism all day long and still want those things to be under a safe lock and key. And so, to a degree, like, this warrior imperative does make sense, and it does make sense on a cultural level, like, outside of imperialism, outside of capitalism. Because remember, like, a lot of our societies were pre-capitalist. Not all of them. Some of them adapted quite well, but some of us didn't, and because we were pre-capitalist, so. We run a wide gamut. You can't like paint us all with one brush, but so the military is important to us, and so having served in this nation's military, we have a stake in this nation. It's part of us. We are a part of it. Like, you can't go to people who are willing to put their lives on the line for this nation and tell them America is no more. That's just not going to work. And also, like, there's just the real politic of, okay, so you divide up America, right? What next? What happens then? Do you really think there's not going to be any wars between places that, like, there is never going to be a war between Illinois and Ohio, but you break up and like, suddenly, like, there could be a war between the Shawnee and the Potawatomi, again, two of my people, that one that lived in Ohio and one that lived in Illinois. Like, that is utterly conceivable. Like, you break up these territories into places, jurisdictions, as Rainer Shea says, that were ruled by natives before the Americans came, or the white Europeans came. You know, if you just divide up the jurisdictions like that, they will eventually go to war with each other. You are fooling yourself to think that you can just like create some like USSA out of whole cloth and it's gonna work somehow. And then, I'm not. They wouldn't even call it the USSA. They'd just be like the People's Republic of Turtle Island. No, that's just not feasible. We would be at each other's throats. Cause here. Like, who gets? Okay, so the Black Hills, for you, the majority of my viewers who are going to be white people who don't know, the Black Hills is like Jerusalem to a bunch of different native nations. Figuring out whether Jerusalem belongs to Palestine or Israel has been like one of the most intractable political issues of foreign affairs for the last 70 or so years. Do you really want the Black Hills to become that? Like, right now, okay, it is a cheesy tourist trap run by cheesy white people. Do you want it to be Jerusalem? Do you want native, like Cherokee, or not Cherokee, Cheyenne and Lakota and Arapaho and Kiowa peoples to be like shedding blood over the Black Hills? Right now, all of them, anyone who wants, can go to the Black Hills and pray to Tankashila, to Wakantaka, the great, or the grandfather and the great mystery, respectively. Both generally accepted ways to refer to God in the Lakota language. Like, yeah, and never mind like the Lakota claim, like, and theirs is like the most probably legally defensible in court. But do you think there's going to? Did the Crusaders care about legal claim? There will be Crusaders one day. If we go down this path, if we break apart the Union, and it's okay. It's not because like I love white people. I love Union. Okay, like I love the fact that we are all one continent together, basically, except for the Canadians, but they're basically in on this too, just kind of not. But like, we're all basically one big, peaceful, happy continent together. I mean, we've got our differences, we've got our issues, nothing's perfect, but my God, things are better than the raiding and nomadic warfare. And I guess my dad died out of nowhere because, well, our society raids the other society next door, and that's just how things have always been and always will be. And like, life doesn't have to be like that. The whites did a lot of bad things, but a continental union isn't one of them. Like, peace is good. Let us fight no more forever, like Chief Joseph said. And, like, working class natives, we fly the flag. Like, my God. Okay, so, speaking of the Lakota, go see the Crazy Horse Riders every year. Every year they go from the Crazy Horse Monument in the Black Hills. It's like they started carving up, because they saw Mount Rushmore, like, well, we've got heroes too. We're going to carve Crazy Horse in one. I don't know how Crazy Horse himself might have felt about that, but, the cool thing about, like, treating us natives as, like, real, actual people and not noble savages is, like, our cultures are allowed to evolve. I used to think the Crazy Horse Monument was cringe, but now thinking about it, it's like, you know, the Lakota culture is allowed to evolve as a people, and they're allowed to change their mind on what they value and why, and like the sorts of. So yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the first culture that carved stuff into the sides of mountains, and it wouldn't be the last. I mean, like, we all bemoaned when the Taliban blew up the Bamiyan statues in Afghanistan, but and I mean, like, that was a loss. But my point is, yeah, that was a loss. Like, those were cultural artifacts, and so yeah, actually thinking about it, the Crazy Horse Monument is based. Um, and because actually, yeah, see, I can get behind like the OG Landbackaroos, actually, like Tecumseh and Crazy Horse and them, because it was a live issue then. The question wasn't settled. There was a independent sovereign Lakota nation. There was an independent sovereign Shawnee nation. These things existed and were able to fight for their freedom, in fact. And but interestingly enough, the ones that had the best chance of succeeding were the ones like Tecumseh, that were trying to create basically a native United States, to apply the concept of continental union, but of the native nations. And so, like, the whites won. Are the ones that created the union on their terms, but we have it. We have the union now. Let us keep it, and whatever is wrong with it, we can fix. But but yeah. Anyway, go to this. Check out this Crazy Horse ride sometime. Like, they go from the Crazy Horse Monument to Fort Robinson in Nebraska, which is just a little bit west of Chadron. But they ride through Chadron every year, and on their horses, because they still ride. Like, I had kids that would literally drive a horse to school. No joke, that happened. They're avid horsemen and archers to this day. It's kind of awesome. Like, these little kids, were just like better at outdoorsing in all these fundamental ways than me, the adult that was supposedly teaching them. It was kind of based, actually. Yeah, the Lakota are hella based. But anyway, they go to Fort Robinson because that's where Crazy Horse died, where he was killed, murdered, in point of fact. But even as they march from the monument honoring one of their national heroes who defied the U.S. to the literal place where he died, they fly the U.S. flag. Why? Because they're veterans, most of them, or they're family members of veterans, and they are the people, more likely than not, statistically speaking, that died for your freedom, that bled for your freedom, that got wounded or saw their buddies die and have to live with that every day of their lives for your freedom. And yes, for U.S. imperialism too. But a lot of some of that actually did trickle down to us. That's like your everyday low prices, so to speak. They actually, yeah, like, as horrible as it is, what little bit about this capitalist nightmare is good, is affordable for us, is partly a result of their sacrifice. Unfortunately, we should be able to support ourselves and be able to have industries and worker collectives here, but insofar as we've had a mode of life, they've been a key part of that. And even though the system itself is unethical, highly unethical, you do have to kind of acknowledge where you come from and accept the past, even if you weren't always thrilled with it. Um, but like, so this is not the basis of Landback. It's not originating in the working classes of any of the peoples it claims to speak for. All of these people are becoming more Republican every year. Because here's another anecdote from when I was a teacher. Um, it was in 2016 when like Trump was first getting elected, and there was one kid who was just like decided to like wrong foot some motivational speaker who was like asking him who his role model was, and he was like Donald Trump, and he was like the motivational speaker was just like moved on to the next kid who answered like Malala Yousafzai or whatever, like was the more accepted hopeful standard answer. But like as I think back, that kid was based. That kid was hella based. Like, he was more based than anyone else in that entire school at that moment because he was like the only dude, the only kid that supported Trump. Everyone else was like divided between Hillary and Bernie, and there were legit kids that thought I was a great teacher, but were honest to God mad at me because I was a Bernie supporter, unfortunately, in those days. But like, yeah, no, that kid was hella based, and it's only It's only grown bigger on the reservation since then. Because I mean, I'll tell you, the math that a lot of people were doing in the working class of any nationality, not just natives, not just blacks, not just Hispanics, not just Asians or Hawaiians for that matter, but like all of the working classes of all nations. What did we do? How much money did the Republicans how much money did Trump send us? How much money did the Democrats send us? Well, Donald J. Trump gave me $1,800. I've got a video idea. Yeah, he gave me $1,800, and I put some of it aside, and like I buy gas with it for whenever I'm gonna go like collecting rocks and quarrying rocks that I'm gonna use to build the wall around this place. But yeah, I am building a wall, and I am making Donald Trump pay for it. But I decided like I've got so much rock gathered up, and that like I think tomorrow I'm going to just do like a time lapse video of me just building that wall, and I'll show you how it's done, and then I'll just go for it. Because that's the thing that needs to happen. But anyway, so yeah, Donald Trump gave us $1,800, and then Joe Biden gave us $1,400, and they're like, well, we are, 600 of it was already given, and it's like we're not doing that math. No. Trump gave us 1,800 because that 600 was actually under him, and he had given us 1,200 before, and you gave us 1,400. So we're not stupid. We can do the math. If it's just a straight up bidding war, Trump wins. Like, he can talk all the dumb racist stuff he wants. We don't care. Like, at the end of the day, he's putting more chickens in our pot than you are. Like, that's just facts. And workers pay attention to stuff like that. Lumpins pay attention to stuff like that. Anyone who is just like skating by barely pays attention to stuff like that. So, and that's what we care about, not like land back, okay? Like, talk to us about our class interests, not land back. So anyway, where did land back originate? Lenin fucked up. Lenin did not fuck up very often. And to be fair, this fuck up was not really discovered and denounced until the special military operation in Ukraine. Putin made this speech where he denounced this fuck up of Lenin's. And it's not often that like I will hear non-communist criticism of a communist and be like, yeah, that's basically correct. But Putin's right. Thing is, Putin has the benefit of having seen the effects of Lenin's line, where Lenin was just guessing at the future, that a future he'd never see. He died in 1924. Like Stalin might have been able to imagine it a little better because he was a little bit closer in time, but truly, a conservative today is going to have access to more information than a communist 100 years ago. And Lenin was not wrong about much, but this was something he was wrong about. And what am I talking about, actually? It is that nations within the USSR should be able to secede from the USSR. This was a moot point for most of Soviet history, but then when the CIA came to power, yeah, basically that's true, with Gorbachev, it mattered because then like you had these chauvinists and all the different Soviet nations being like, well, give Clay now, and wanting their independence, and it broke up the USSR. There was like a referendum, and get down from there, you silly girl. Nah. No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Anyway, enough Goldfinger vibes. Where were we? Yeah, so Lenin messed up. It gave the theoretical basis for like the secession of the Baltic countries, which is followed by like, I think the secession of a couple others, but ultimately the secession that mattered was when Boris Yeltsin took Russia out of the Soviet Union. There was like 4 days where like Kazakhstan was the entire Soviet Union until like they just threw in the towel too and were like, no, we're doing our own thing then, I guess. But Lenin should have insisted on the unity of the Soviet state, and if he had done that, the Soviet Union would be with us today in some form. But I mean, he could have even like treated the border regions, which is all Ukraine means in the dialect of Russian in which they speak. It just means the borderlands. That's why it's often called the Ukraine, is because we're just translating the meaning of the word, like, and talking with it as if its meaning were intelligible in English. And that's why the Ukrainians find it offensive when we say the Ukraine, because they're mad that we're like implying that they are just border regions of Russia, when they are proud Banderite Azov fascists. So like, and that is like, okay, I wrote an article a while back on my blog Tanky Doodle called "The Wages of Settlers in Srebrenica," and it basically ties land back to various red fascist movements that may have postured as communists, but were basically just murderous fash. And Azov didn't even pretend to be socialist. They're just straight up fash, and our deep state's backing them. And they're still like on board with the whole land back stuff. It's just they're trying to decolonize Russia, because that's one of many uses that land back is going to serve our imperialist deep state, is to decolonize Russia and decolonize China and decolonize our enemies, decolonize anyone that threatens us. We're no longer bringing you freedom. It's no longer uh, we're gonna free America's gonna free the shit out of you. No, that's over now. Now it's like, yes, your culture is problematic, and so we're going to decolonize you. That's what it's moved on to. So nothing's really changed. But they're acting like it has. But yeah, so anyway, that was a rare fuck up of Lenin's. But then there was a dude, Marxist theorist that gets named Frantz Fanon, and he and a guy named Bordega, I don't know, probably Bordega. Him and Bordega get ruthlessly. I mean, they were comrades. Like, I think I uphold them. I might not uphold every last idea of theirs, especially with Fanon, because I haven't read much of his stuff. But I've found some of Oh wait, did I say Bordega? Shit, no, I meant Gramsci. Italian communists. What do you know? No, so some of Gramsci's ideas, I like the march through the institutions, I find useful and have used in my own theoretical work. But and Fanon is mostly fine. He's mostly spitting facts, but as far as I can tell, but they both got deliberately misinterpreted by the Frankfurter School to create third worldism. Okay, so the Frankfurt School is the real term, but the Frankenfurters, because it was this hideous monster that should never have been, and its very existence was an affront to God. That is to say, the fake-ass CIA left that was created in the 60s. The Frankfurt School was part of it, the Congress for Cultural Freedom was part of it. A lot of modern left movements can be traced back to that. And third worldism was a creation of the CIA left. Yeah, Jay Sakai is a cop. Caleb's explained this on his stream a couple times. I can if people need me to, but the stream is already going to be really long because I've got a lot of material written. I was going to do several streams tonight, but I think it's just going to be one. And then I'm going to try to get some more, at least one more done tomorrow, as well as hopefully that bonus content with the wall. So I'm not going to explain why Jay Sakai is a cop tonight, but yeah, I will save it for another video, because it's going to be a kind of lengthy explanation. But I have done other interviews where I've explained it though. I was interviewed by Backpacking America and explained it. But anyway, so but just suffice it to say, he is a cop and I can prove it. And I guess the speed run of proving it is find me a picture of Jay Sakai's face. Google it. Any other author under the sun, you can find what their face looks like. Not him. You can't find a picture of his face because he's not a real person. He's a pseudonym under which the cops write cop propaganda. If you doubt me, find me his face. if you do find his face, like, I want to know. Send that to me. Send that noise to me, because if I'm wrong, I want to know. But I've never seen his face. At most, I've seen like a picture of some random like dude in a photograph throwing a rock, some protester at some protest somewhere. Like, that could be anybody. And you can't see his face. But yeah. So how does Landback help imperialism today? First off, by getting commies to push for it, it alienates us from the workers, who therefore stay relatively disorganized without us. Understand, we are like the most advanced segment of theorists, with our sympathies lying with the workers, right? So they need us. They need us, like, working with them. But they're patriotic. They don't do Landback. The people that we think Landback are helping, or it doesn't speak to them. It doesn't speak to their values. It never asked their values in the first place. So, like, and it never asked their values in the first place on purpose, because it's designed to keep us alienated from the workers, so that we can't advise and guide them into, like, a better organization. So, like, I already talked about the CIA narratives calling for the decolonization of Russia and China. And honestly, I'm not going to lie, they kind of want to decolonize us too. 'Cause when the Civil War comes, I'm going to tell you, the other side, they're eventually, the other side is going to be the deep state and the Democrats. But they're going to ration that all these stupid, dumb hick flyover states, like, because they've run out of colonies, right? The entire world is their colony, just about. Like, they're even squeezing Europe. Europe's been, like, there was that Euro crisis, and like a fourth of European millennials were out of work, and that's been the case for like a decade over there, and nothing really changed on that score. People just stopped talking about it. Extremism spiked in Europe. They're heading straight towards fascism. But like, so yeah, the American bourgeois deep state has financially colonized and penetrated the entire world, and is sucking profits out of the entire world. Like, the social democracies of Europe are being plundered. Like, Canada is being plundered. Like, everything's being plundered. Even America has been sort of plundered, but they can't really step up the plundering of the Rust Belt, so long as it's the same country, right? If you see this, and like, there's memes, right? There'll be like the United States of Canada, that's the good guys, right? And then in the red splotch in the middle, the dumb hicks is like Jesus land or something, right? And haha, funny, because dumb hicks are funny. Fucking classist garbage. But yeah, like, so the decolonization of America works in their favor when the Civil War hits, because the flyover country is the last possible colony. They can colonize the places that were too dumb hick religious god-loving, guns and god-loving places, too narrow-minded to accept their mincing ways, and in return, these enlightened Democrat cities are going to colonize the piss out of us and treat us as slaves. No, I mean, Nevada. Like, I am recording this in Pacific time, right? I am like an hour from the Utah border, and at least as the crow flies, and right across that border is the Mountain Time Zone. If I went 2 hours north into Idaho, I'd also be in the Mountain Time Zone. Why am I in the Pacific Time Zone? Because Nevada is an economic colony of California, and California doesn't even bother to pretend otherwise. They have a county called Nevada County that actually tried to grab a bunch of our land back in the Wild West days, and then like the federal government had to step in and be like, no, bad California, no Nevada for you, no. And so they kind of shut up about that. But no, seriously, California is like the worst people. Everything all the California hate you hear is, I just want to like rubber stamp that. That like hatred of California, it's like one of the few bigotries I find acceptable. It's like right out there with like hatred of furries or something. Like, it's okay to hate California. It's okay to hate hippies. Actually, there's another one. Like, but anyway, my point is, so like, in all of these cases, decolonization narratives help the bourgeoisie. So, like, disunion and decentralization. I mean, what are those? Okay, so anarchists are all about the decentralization, but anarchists either deliberately or accidentally help fascism in every conflict. So we can say that all of these things, all of these ideas, the land back thing, the disunion, decentralization, all of it, this helps bourgeois liberalism and fascism. And that's why the antithesis of fascism is democratic centralism, aka communism. So how will land back help imperialism in the future? Well, the Confederacy was identity politics rooted secessionist treason, and so will land back be, even though it postures as the opposite of the Confederacy. Like, slap black people in the gray uniforms and it's still wrong. Black power can be a revolutionary slogan among the oppressed, but it could be an oppressive slogan potentially one day. Like in this land back scenario, I could totally see that being the case, or whatever power. Like, it implies the use of power on the basis of race, and the American ethos, and I will say this for, like, the whites, like, they didn't really live up to their pretty words, but my God, could they make some pretty words. And, the idea of a republic based on all of its citizens and equally protecting all of its citizens is a noble one and one worth defending. Like, one that's just for a certain ethnicity scares the living piss out of me. Look how the Palestinians get treated in a land for Jews. Like, I mean, I am not going to wade in that minefield, but, like, my point is ethno-states are a bad idea. We need states that have universal citizenship, or at the very least, I should say, we need them in America, in the Americas. Because, okay, here's an interesting fact. All the Eurasian states, from Europe to, like, Southeast Asia, they define citizenship mostly by blood. Whereas all the states in the Americas define citizenship by where you were born. Like, the conservatives complain about so-called anchor babies because, like, if a baby is born here, they're an American citizen. Doesn't matter if they're, the mother was pregnant and, like, they crossed the Mexican border 2 minutes ago. If she gives birth on American soil, it doesn't matter if they're all Mexicans. That baby's American. And, like, the law works the same in Mexico and Guatemala and Honduras, Belize, like, go down the list all the way down to, like, Argentina and Chile. I think it's down to, like, all of these countries these post-colonial republics wanting to encourage immigration. So the like making citizenship rooted in the land rather than in blood made more sense. Plus, all of these are artificial ideas. Like, other than the natives that were living here, there's no like Native American blood. There's no Native Argentinian blood. There's no Native Chilean blood. There's no Native Mexican blood. That's other than the natives. Like, everyone else is an immigrant from somewhere else, so you can't really be talking about like like my American ethnicity. Like, oh, okay, over time that will naturally develop, because you got like, you could talk about like India as an example of this, right? There is, you can't really tease out which parts of the I mean, you can to some degree, like which parts of the population are more descended from the Aryan invaders of antiquity and from the Dravidian locals of antiquity. Like, to some degree you can, just by skin color, but like, uh, and and even to some degree caste. But most Indians are just like somewhere in the middle. They're like somewhere between those. And like, they are an ethnicity that it didn't exist 4,000 years ago, but was created by the merging of two different ethnicities. And I feel like in the long term, like we're talking maybe a couple hundred years from now, that might start to be true of America. The melting pot. I mean, like, it's already happening among white people. You have like just white people that don't know where their ancestors really came from, other than Europe somewhere. You have people that answer the census that they are just, when it asks their ethnicity, they just say American. And like, honestly, I think that's kind of based. Like, because, yeah, I mean, we do have our own way of doing things here. We have our own foods and our own music and our own national dress and, all the things that makes a culture. We have them. Like, they're very related to things that happen in other countries. But we put our own twist on it. And if it's not as distinguishable from other countries these days as it might have been in the past, it's because, like, well, American cultural imperialism, basically, like, what we, and, but I'm gonna say something about this cultural imperialism. So, like, what is cool depends on, I think, more than anything, what the workers listen to. Like, think about blues or jazz. Like, that wasn't, rich people listening to it and being like, okay, this is a legitimate art form now. It was rich people seeing poor people listen to it and find legitimacy in it, and grudgingly finding room amidst their operas and their classical music for blues and jazz over time. And the same is true with rock and roll. And because, like, America is Europe's outsourced working class. Europe just couldn't afford to feed all of its people anymore, so, like, just shipped them off the colonies. And, some of them willingly, some of them not so much. And Africans too, mostly unwillingly. And so we're just like other nations surplus working class, right? So that, I think that's part of why American cultural imperialism really caught on in the 20th century, why rock music and blue jeans and so forth were so big, was because we were finally strong enough to exercise some kind of cultural hegemony, but also we're just inherently better at it because of our working class roots than the regimes that came before, the British hegemony that came before. I mean, because even the British, so-called British invasion, you got the Beatles and the Monkees and so forth. That was I feel only possible because they came from the country that happened to speak the language that the United States of America also spoke. If that were not the case, if the Beatles were German, I don't think they would have happened. I don't think that, they might have still happened, but they wouldn't have been as big a deal. Because, can you think of any German artists from the 60s? I can, but that's because I'm weird, and I actually, am well studied on this crap. But, I'm not most people, and your average person cannot say name a single German pop star from decades ago. That's just not a thing. But we all know the Beatles, and we all probably know a bunch of other British pop stars. I've got my favorite band. My two favorite bands actually are British. Pink Floyd, The Cure. Love those guys. They are both Brits. But yeah, so I go on these tangents, man. I gotta stop. This video is gonna be super long. But anyway, yeah. All of this is to say, or to get back to my point, that Landback is essentially impulse secessionist treason, and the bourgeoisie are eventually going to have to counter-revolute against the legitimate, democratically elected, constitutional government of this land. They're going to do it, I bet, through some kind of blue stop the steal. And they're going to legitimize it with this Landback crap because it's the only popular narrative that can possibly justify the crimes they are going to have to commit, the treason they're going to have to commit. Because they will first try to posture as America's legitimate government, but when that becomes untenable, they will embrace this Republic of Turtle Island garbage, like a man drowning and reaching for a life raft. This People's Republic of Turtle Island Landback-Roo garbage is going to be that life raft. So anyway, yeah, read my book, link below. I feel like that's going to be a meme for this channel. But yeah, the path to socialism in America requires the election of a president on a minimum program that, if implemented, would bank the bourgeoisie. In Lincoln's time, it was freeing the slaves. In ours, it will be wrecking the tools of machinery, the machinery of empire. Defunding the CIA, defunding the FBI, purging them, and withdrawing our troops from across the world, and withdrawing our support for fascist regimes like Ukraine. Anyway, we do all this, and this will trigger a bourgeois counter-revolution, because they need all that imperialist machinery in place to keep the super profits flowing. Without it, other nations will begin to nationalize our industries over there. Or I say ours, but it's really the bourgeois industries over there. The corporation, the corporate branches and stuff. And because, why let all the profits flow to America when there's really no reason for that? All the stuff is established in there. It's local labor providing those profits, so it should stay in country. And once we don't have the machinery to stop them, they're going to realize that real quick and nab it for themselves. Waves of nationalizations that were usually in the past were held at bay by CIA coups they will break out once we don't have anything in place to like stop that. So there will be a counter revolution, and instead the CIA coup will happen here in America. This will be the bourgeois counter revolution. This blue stop the steal. And the media and the deep state will be greasing the wheels that as much as they humanly can. And like when this civil war comes, it's like gonna be these shitlib bourgeoisie doing the blue stop the steal, and they will happily, these Democrats will happily trade promises of an ethno-state to any and all fash that are willing to defend their means. This is why I say the land back crews are going to die helping the capitalists, because they will, like, if you're really of that land back crew mindset, what is the passing of capitalism? The restoration of the Shawnee nation or whatever, like restoration of Shawnee sovereignty, as if that was possible or realistic. But if you're of that mindset, you will take the ethno-state and leave the end of capitalism on the table. Like, that can happen later. You want your ethno-state. And it's just not worth it. Like, we could all progress to a new era where we're all united as one. Like, yes, we'll all have, like, our nations that we can be patriotic about, but, like, it will be sublimated amidst these new federal structures that will slowly over the millennia come to embrace more and more of humankind. These social unions that will eventually, yes, one day I think, encompass all of humanity in socialist and democratic order. But not in our lifetimes. But yeah, like, it's always just going to be ethno-states. That's what they're going, because they're not going to be able to hand out class states, worker states. So their only other thing they can hand out is ethno-states. Last time it was the promises of a white ethno-state, the Confederate soldiers manning the lines, and right now it is to the Azovites manning the front lines. But yeah, this time it will be promises of black and Latinx, and I rolled my eyes on purpose, that one, Latinx, and native ethno-states, the land back crews. Like, actual working class minorities will not support this shit done in our names, which is why these movements will fail. So, like, first off, yes, the white share of the population of America is decreasing, but it's still like, as of, I want to say, like 2016, it was still like 70%, and it's still like going to be like, I bet like no smaller than 65 or 63% right now as I speak, and if even that, right? Like, it's still a very huge majority of the country, like, and that is one of the dangers of the bourgeoisie trying this strategy like they are. Except that it can work because they know they can peel off the white middle class, a lot of whom will back this land back thing, out of white guilt and whatever. But that's how this can work, is because it's not really about the minorities, it's about the white people, it's about mobilizing them, but they're too wrapped up in this white guilt and this Ferngully complex to get behind the Klan like they used to. So now, to organize them around like the concept of an ethno-state, they have to appeal to that, like, like 1/64th Cherokee in them, so to speak, to get it going. And that's where it is. So yeah, like I was speaking earlier about Tecumseh, and he is a distant relation of mine. He was one of the last people, probably the last person actually, with a shot at achieving quote unquote land back. He almost sacked Philadelphia. Like, well, yeah, okay, so his brother, Tenskwatawa, was a prophet, and was like, um, between the two of them, like, and Tecumseh was more like the political leader, but like, in the war leader. But between the two of them, they were able to create this sort of like um, native confederation of nations to oppose the United States. Like they brought the Haudenosaunee and the Shawnee and like a bunch of others together, and like if you've ever heard of a guy named Matt Anthony Wayne, the dude that Fort Wayne's named after, it's named Fort Wayne because it was actually originally named Prophetstown after Tenskwatawa, because it was the headquarters of this native confederation. Um, and then, Matt Anthony Wayne defeated Tecumseh in battle and sacked Prophetstown and built Fort Wayne on the ashes, and it's there to this day. But Tecumseh was based, and he is actually a major figure in the founding of a nation, not a native nation, but Canada. Without Tecumseh's vital aid and assistance, the Canadians might not have done as well as they did in the War of 1812. Native allies have been like really the unsung hero of Canadian history, I think. I'm not Canadian myself, so it's not really my story to tell, but yeah, like Tecumseh deserves more of a role in Canadian history than I think he's gotten traditionally. But yeah, he ran the best practice possible, which was to create a union to fight our the white union that was coming for his people, and they worked together. They used the best technology they had, the best political science at their disposal. They did everything right, and America won. Fort Wayne was built on their ashes. Chief Joseph was a man who of the Nez Perce, yeah, he had his heart broken over and over and over again by white treachery. But he's the guy that said, "I will fight no more forever." And it's because he understood, like, you can do everything right, and it doesn't matter that these guys are bastards. They have far more guns, far more horses, far more people than you do, and that's just facts. Like, you have to learn to live with that fact somehow. And although the whites and their guilt have like made our time on this continent a little easier in the generations since, we still have to live with the fact that we are like 2% of the population today. We cannot win a war against white people. Even if we allied with all the other non-white people on this continent, we would still lose. Like, even if you don't like that fact, it is nonetheless facts. Like, we have to get along. America's here to stay. But here's the good news. All nationalism is imaginary. It's going to sound funny because I identify as a patriotic socialist, but yes, all nationalism, all patriotism, it's imaginary. Okay? Like, here, to talk about my European ancestry for a sec. I'm mostly... I've got like a little bit from all over Europe, but like mostly Scottish. But Scotland doesn't really exist. Let me tell you why. There was Pictland, which was the people that were left over from that the Romans couldn't conquer. But then there were these invaders, the Scotai tribe from Northern Ireland, and they landed on the western coast of Ireland around like what's now Glasgow and Strathclyde and so forth, and they established the kingdom of Dalriata, and the Dalriata and the Picts, they warred and intermarried and traded and so forth for a couple hundred years, and finally the Dalriata overcame the Picts and proclaimed a united Scottish nation. But it was just a union of Dalriata and the Picts, who were different people. And who are the Picts? And where did the Scotai come from? Like, we know Northern Ireland, but like, we don't know that much about the Picts. Were they Celts? Were they some pre-Celtic people? Because we know Britain had, the Celts did not originate in Britain. Celtic culture was an import from Austria, ultimately. So, and ultimately what they were like unions between different groups and unions between different groups, and sometimes these unions were based around common interests and common values, and that's what I'm saying. All nationalism is imaginary. It is what the postmoderns call a social construct, which basically means that we dream it together. We can dream it to mean good things or bad things. And I guess why I don't find Patsock cringe or anything is because it's sort of embracing patriotism and nationalism as a tool in the arsenal of the political revolutionary to make the revolution against capitalism in the face of these material conditions. Like, what if we made American patriotism like, okay, because what is the content of that? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Like any school child can tell you that. Like, those aren't bad things, actually. A communist America would want those things too. A socialist America would want those things too. Like, it's okay to want those things. Like, it's okay to have a nation based on the ideals of securing those things for its people. Like, we can build communism with stuff like that. We can build the revolution with stuff like that. It's, what if we just made America live up to the ideals it claimed to? Like, that seems like a good thing. But yeah, like, our job is not to undo historical injustices between nations necessarily, but primarily to undo injustices between classes. Because if we do undo injustices between classes first, injustices between nations will mend eventually on their own. And why I say that is because, first off, in a lot of the injustices between nations that, like, where you can, like, see it's affected their economic development, are kind of injustices between classes. In those cases, like, say, to this day, there's more whites in the middle class than there are, like, minorities in the middle class. And there's more blacks and Hispanics in the working class than there are as a proportion of their total people than there are whites. There's still more white workers in a relative sense, but in an absolute sense, but in a relative sense, there's more black and brown. But yeah, so as a lot of these injustices between nations will be ameliorated as injustices between classes are ameliorated, because black and Hispanic people the workers will rise economically a lot quicker than any other group, and they'll be, white workers will rise just as quickly, but they aren't going to be as big of a population or a percentage of white people as the black and Hispanic workers. So, and the thing is, making that happen is something we can all agree on. Conservatives don't hate black people or want them to fail. Maybe a couple of them are edgelords on the internet sometimes, but fundamentally in their hearts of hearts, they want all Americans to succeed. And so do I. And so we can agree on that. And, if American nationalism and patriotism just means that, plus maybe hot dogs and fireworks on the 4th, whatever, that's fine. That's not something to get butthurt about. That's not something to oppose bitterly and want to destroy, because we have a history and not all of it's good. Well, every nation has a history and most of it's not good. Our bourgeoisie, we're just more successful scumbags than the rest of the world's bourgeoisie. That's what happened. But anyway, yeah, so nationalism in the hands of a communist is merely a tool. It's an empty vessel to fill with the best, most comradely, most righteous sentiments available in the national history in order to make such feelings instinctual in the workers, nothing more and nothing less. So what is the proper orientation of a communist or anti-imperialist to Landback? First off, you cannot cooperate with them. Helping them is helping future secession, because you know they're going to do it. Because I just explained to you that that's where their interests lie. And so it's helping them at all is counter to communist interests. But what, you might say, if a Landback org gets raided by the FBI? Well, it's either the FBI trying to establish the street cred of an org it actually controls, because how better to get street cred amongst anti-imperialists and be like, hey, look, I was raided by the FBI. You can listen to what you want, but they're scared of me. But notice all the Uhuru people are still out and about and talking and able to conduct political activities. So this raid might have been enormous, but it wasn't any bombing of MOVE headquarters or anything. So it is entirely possible that they're just trying to get street cred for one of their front organizations. But if it's not that, then it's also possible that part of the FBI doesn't understand its own interests, and we shouldn't interfere as our quarry makes a mistake. Look, there are divisions in the deep state. It is quite possible that a decent chunk of the Department of Homeland Security is actually secretly backing Trump and stonewalling these January 6th investigations. Part of the FBI rank and file probably feels similarly, because, okay, so as far as the deep state goes, traditionally, if the FBI was the Republicans, the CIA was the Democrats, the liberal wing of it, that wanted to kind of manipulate society through liberal ends by manipulating the media and culture and stuff. Whereas the FBI was the guys that just want to maintain order by cracking commie skulls, which, ow. But also I can kind of respect the directness of it. And, J. Edgar Hoover was our very first, trans FBI director. So, progress. But yeah, like, so you can't rule out the possibility that if this wasn't just like trying to establish cred for, and like, if Uhuru isn't an op, then it's quite possible that like you've just got some regular agents that are like, well, we're supposed to be cracking commie skulls, and these are commies, and they have skulls. Why no crack? You know, like, and it could just be like not that deep. That's quite possible. But yeah, like, here's another thing. Right after Uhuru got raided and they were platformed by the CPI, they demanded that the FBI raid Trump. So, like, if they have no solidarity with someone who might actually be able to destroy the deep state, why should we have solidarity with them? Like, this was right before Trump got raided, and then, you know, like, that they were saying that he should be raided. So, like, they might not have said that if it's possible, but, like, they should have also chosen their words more wisely if they're trying to create a coalition, which they're not, because they're just gratuitously insulting Trump, and therefore his voters. So, like, Uhuru isn't Black Hammer, but it's the same Landback line with less of a drama club Hitler running the show. Seriously, like, okay, it is amazing watching Ghazi in action. By amazing, I mean, like, a train wreck. You can't look away, but it's god-awful wrong. Like, oh, there's this one video where he's just like, alright, I want you guys to say, land back. Land back. You know, it's just like, I don't know, like, it was, and then you just got a bunch of dudes, like, standing, you know, solid, stiff in the background, like, looking 1000% like black fascism. You know, okay, so, like, Uhuru doesn't have, like, some Ghazi figure ruining everything. I'll give them that. But, like, it's the same basic principles. It's the same idea of, like, pay up white worker because, you know, it was you, not the white bourgeoisie, that exploited us. Now, this is not to say that we shouldn't organize minority communities, because remember what I said up top, like, minority workers are with us, not them. You know, and they are our fellow Americans. Every effort should be made to demonstrate the class nature of the Landback ruse by organizing their purported base out from under them. And these fellow Americans deserve our solidarity anyway, because that's the hard work of organization, especially among the workers. What are you doing for them? Not what your political program is going to do for them in the future, but, like, they got an electricity bill. Are you going to pay that, or are you going to figure out a way to, like, get them electricity some other way? You know, or are, you know, their kids are hungry. Are you going to feed them? Like, they have real needs in the real world, and the first political party, the first political organization to start taking care of those needs en masse is going to win control of this country. I guarantee it. That Black Panther praxis, because they did that, and that was a very successful, very amazing Black-led organization. I'm not adverse to the idea of such things. It's just I'm adverse to the idea of land back. God bless America, or GTFO. But yeah, like, as far as what kind of solidarity I have to offer right now, unfortunately, it's kind of threadbare, but it's growing. Any American worker from any background is welcome to come to Tobar right here, where I'm recording this, live as well as I do, work as hard as I do, and get ahead in life together with me. It's all I have to offer, but it's something. And for the record, there is actually someone else here. Dude broke down. His old fellow named Homer, white guy, from Arizona, I think. He's just traveling north, but like he broke down in Wells, and his van barely works. And it's gonna be next month before he gets his social security check that lets him pay for repairs to his van and get on the road. Until then, like the truck stops were hassling him, moving his van like every 4 hours or whatever. It's some inane bullshit. So like he can park on my collective land, and he can park there and not be hassled. And I've got plenty of food to share. He's not gonna go hungry. I made fries for us both tonight, and like doesn't sound like much, but that's more solidarity work than a lot of people do. A lot of these synthetic leftoids. What have you just done for some random stranger lately? Seriously, like these random acts of kindness are not going to change anything, but they do kind of like normalizing them. Does help on the margins. It helps desperate people avoid being more desperate, which helps all of society ultimately. And like where it doesn't involve like a lot of effort, I think we should just like normalize being good Samaritans. But that's all I have to offer. But it's something, and like seriously, my praxis is working. Because as Tobar's resources grow, and they are growing, I am hoping to be able to work cooperatively with American workers of all backgrounds to put a real backstop to poverty and deprivation in this country ourselves, without asking imperialist bourgeois governments to do it for us. Because that's the real thing. We can't, like, there's this great bumper sticker I saw once. You can trust the government. Ask any Indian. What's his face? Barry Goldwater also said something along those lines, like, any government that can give you everything you ever wanted is also big enough to take it all away. Like, and as we're seeing, Biden offers these little cutesy programs with one hand, and then he like sicks a bunch of IRS agents on us with the other. So like, nothing really good is. We can't count on the government. But that's not to say that we don't need socialism. It's just we don't need big government welfare state socialism. We need like the real deal. Real socialism is when the workers own the means of production, and I own these means. And anyone that wants is welcome to co-own them with me. And the reality is that process can industrialize, or not industrialize necessarily, but it can grow the economy of a country real quick. When collectivization happened in the Soviet Union, it happened quick, like in a year, and it was mostly voluntary. People were switching over because they saw how useful it was. Like, I'm talking big for a fairly broke guy, but I understand the historical forces and processes at work. I understand that a lot of organization is happening in haste these days, and we're on the verge of great things. So, like, that's how I'd like to radically reconstruct or build back better our economy by collectivizing it without getting the government involved, so that we can provide for ourselves, because the government won't. But yeah, so providing for the needs of the workers, like I said, it's how the Black Panthers built so much political power, and it's how we will provide the bona fides of our patriotic socialism to Americans everywhere by living up their great legacy. And now you know, and knowing is half the battle. Hot Take Express!